Hello there, everyone. It's Patricia Hayes here, your executive advisor, career empowerment coach, and authentic networking strategist, with today's episode of the Coffee Time Career Chat Authentic Networking Edition. I'm super excited about bringing this new level of content to you in this time. As we spent so much of the year talking about the things that we needed to do professionally in our career in different ways, it became very evident that the aspects of talking about how to lay out our professional careers in terms of the professional relationships that we build and nurture, it was ever more important. And how do we do that, and the tips and strategies, the pros and cons, and all of that good stuff. And so that's why I decided in this new year that we would pull that issue out on its own and do a separate Coffee Time Career Chat just on authentic networking, which is fine by me because it is truly one of my favorite topics to talk about. So I'm super excited to share with you here today this episode of Coffee Time Career Chat, where we're going to be expanding on an issue that we touched on a little bit in the previous edition of Coffee Time Career Chat, the regular edition on Mondays. Join us Mondays at 10 a.m., where we were talking about new goals and new relationships. And what does that mean? And in the course of that conversation, we gave a little bit of thought and consideration to the fact that you can't achieve new things solely by using your old ways. And that is so important and so true. But then by taking it one step further, which is when you are trying to grow, to do new things, to take on new roles, to pursue new opportunities, you have to leverage your existing relationships. But in order to leverage them, you have to acknowledge the fact that it may be necessary for those relationships not to be necessarily in and of themselves the stepping stone to the new opportunity, but rather that they are the opportunity and source for new contacts that will take you to that next level. And so when you're talking about that, that's what we're going to dig a little bit deeper into in this episode today, where we're going to talk about how do you connect your new goals with the potential development of new relationships that will help you to achieve what it is you seek to achieve this year. So that is the first thing. In this new year, what are the goals that you are setting for the year? If you have not already done so, you must write them down immediately. It doesn't matter if you're still unsure about them or if you don't know how you're going to achieve it. It doesn't matter. The point is you have to get it out of your head and onto paper. I am a huge advocate. If you have followed me in any regard, you know that I'm always advocating for making sure you have your handy dandy notebook, a pen, piece of paper, some sticky notes, whatever, suits your fancy, to make sure that you have those things handy so that you can write down those thoughts, so that you can write down those goals. Because here is the problem when you don't. When you don't capture them in writing, two things happen. Number one, they may be forever lost because they will not reappear in the same way. And number two, you get hamstrung by thinking you know what's going on in your head and not ever actually making it real to yourself. I literally just had a conversation last week with someone who says, you are so right. It does make a world of difference when you actually write it down. Now, it may be scary to you, but when you go through that process of actually writing things down, it makes it real. And if you don't want to make your dreams and goals real, then fine, don't write it down. But if you want to make it real, write it down. And here's the thing, most people, a lot of people, and there's research, so it's not just me saying this, But one of the key factors to people not being successful in achieving their goals is the fact that they did not write them down. So they don't even have any self accountability for what it is they were seeking. Now, what does this have to do with networking? Because that's what we're talking about here, right? If you want to be able to achieve the goals that you are going to write down, you then have to make sure that you can pair up and acknowledge who in your existing network may be able to help and facilitate that growth, or if you need to find someone new. That is the second point. Who now and in the future are going to be able to help you to achieve those goals that you are seeking. This is crucial to making them real. Now, there are a lot of quote problems with this because most times most people don't want to ask someone, or if they do it in an inappropriate manner. What do I mean? Number one, first, it may be, well, I really don't want to bother them, or I haven't talked to that person in such a long time, so it's just going to seem awkward if I just call them out of the blue. Yes, it will. We'll talk about how do you nurture to get back into the right space with that person or those people. The second piece of, well, it may, it's going to be, not just seem awkward, but you're not sure about how to do it. Again, you have to come in with a plan. You don't just go willy-nilly and saying, well, gosh, I haven't talked to you in a while, so can you help me do this, right? Not appropriate. That's the inappropriate piece. That's the, calling someone straight up out of the blue, or someone you don't even know and just hitting them up. It would be like me walking up to you on the street and I don't know you and saying, hey, can I borrow $5? And someone would be like, are you crazy? Like, who are you? That is inappropriate. That is exactly what you do not want to do when you are trying to work your network, which is the reason why it's important to maintain it, and maintaining it means you have to do something. It takes work, right? It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to take a lot of work, but it does take action on a regular basis in order to maintain and even to go one step further and actually nurture your relationships. And here's the thing. There are things that you are going to want to accomplish right now. And right now can mean today, 3 months, 6 months, even a year. Okay, so if we say now is any time between now and the next 12 months. But in the future, where you may not be as explicit about what it is you're going to need or what you're going to want to do, that's that 12-month plus period of time, you are still going to want to have a strong network. If anything, it's going to be even more crucial that you maintain and nurture your network, because you don't know who in it you're going to need to reach out to in those future time frame, okay? So that is why it is super important that as you are looking at the goals that you seek to achieve, that you think about who you need in order to achieve them. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean by saying I need Joe Smith to go call Ann about my job prospects. That's not what I mean. I mean that you need to think about who, in terms of position, relationships that they may have, these different types of things, about how you might need who you might need in order to reach out. So it's more about types of people, where people are located in terms of their career, maybe their level, maybe their position in an organization, those things. Then you can tie it into if you have specific names. If you happen to have specific names, that's great. But here's the thing, if you go straight to a name rather than a type, you have already limited your options. You have limited to trying to put all of your eggs in one basket and base it on what you can, quote, get out of this one person. That is the wrong way to approach it. Okay. So I first always make sure to encourage my clients and those people that I work with and train that you've got to take a bigger picture. It seems scary because you're like, well, but I don't know who that might be. Exactly. That's exactly the reason why you need to open up that lens of who you're looking at, because you don't know. And again, we talked about this the other day, by making assumptions about who people are and what they've done and where they are right now, you wrongfully exclude potential opportunities and people from what you're trying to achieve and how they may be able to help you moving forward. Okay. So that's for this as well. And then when you're thinking about as well for future opportunities, again, that's even more nebulous potentially. And so like if I know that I want to travel to Italy in 2 years, I might not know exactly who I need to talk to because, hello, we're a little shut down on the international travel, right? However, if I know that there are people in my network who have traveled in the past, I can at least start lining them up to say, hey, if I'm looking at maybe doing this in a couple of years, who do you think that I should talk to? Who should I be putting on my list of people to contact when things open up? Or what other issues are there that I'm not seeing right now that I perhaps should start taking a broader viewpoint on so that I can be prepared in the future? Open up that lens. Do not go in with the narrow lens right off the bat. You cut off your opportunities when you do that. Okay? I know that is contrary to conventional wisdom on some things, but this is one of those things where it's important to take a broader scope and then narrow, as opposed to starting narrow. If you start narrow, where do you have to go? Right? Not very far. So take a broader viewpoint on it, looking at who from the perspective of position, leadership, opportunities, network, all of those different types of things, so that you can then focus in and start narrowing as you get a clearer view of what it is you're trying to achieve and what it is you want to do and who you may need in order to help you facilitate it. Now, here's point number 3. Point number 3 is that if you really want to get to where you want to go, you have to give a little in order to get a lot. Okay? Because I know the old saying is really give a little, get a little. No, give a little to get a lot. If you invest just the tiniest bit of effort into helping other people to be successful, you would be absolutely amazed at what your return on that investment is. People will come back to you in times that you don't even expect to ask your input, to provide you a lead on a potential opportunity. I am telling you, I know this for a fact from having experienced it personally, from having watched others that I've coached or worked with to experience it. But it's all about you remembering that when we're talking about authentic networking, it's not about take. It's about giving as well. It is a two-way street. You have to give and not just take. Takers will always lose in the end. If your goal is to just go see who you can reach out to and say, hey, can you help me do this? And then to never give back, whether it's directly to that person or to someone else, then it will catch up with you. People know who the takers are. They start disassociating themselves from the takers. They start cutting people off. Trust me, I've seen it happen. All right? That is not what you want. Especially when you're trying to expand your network in order to be able to achieve even more fabulous or greater things, the last thing you want is to be having your network opportunities and expansion goals nipped in the bud because you treated someone poorly, or because you weren't reciprocal in trying to help people. You cannot go asking for help and refuse to give it. Bottom line. Bottom line. So when people call to say, hey, I'm looking at this, can you help me? The answer, more times than not, should be yes. Now, are there caveats? Absolutely. Because the caveat is when you have someone who is abusing their ass. They only come to you when they want something, right? They only come to you when they need something. When you reach out to them, they're not responsive. Well, guess what? Then that's when you then start to carve out and to be a little more protective, because you ask anyone who I work with, I am extremely protective of my network. I do not give out names and numbers randomly. I do not do that without checking into people, and I will cut you off. And that sounds harsh, but that's because I have spent 30 years building the professional relationships that I have. I am by no means perfect. I have made my share of mistakes, I am sure. And I'm sure there are some people who are like, oh, I can't believe Patricia did that, or whatever. And if I have the opportunity to talk to them and to work through that, I absolutely would. However, most people know I am extremely protective. I do not share people out. I do not make connections willy-nilly. And if you say and use my name in a wrongful way, I will call you out on it and I will cut you off. Because that is how strongly I feel about maintaining and nurturing the professional relationships that I have. And you should feel strongly as well. Why? Because those professional relationships are not something that can be bought with money. You cannot go out and buy yourself a network. You can buy opportunities, you can buy people, but when it comes to the long-term relationship itself, you can't pay for that. Because once the money's gone, the relationship's gone. Those are not the relationships we're looking to establish. All right? So acknowledge that difference. Be willing to give. Be willing to reach out on someone else's behalf. I get those calls weekly, monthly, for sure. And if I can help, I do. If I can't help, I send them to someone else who I think can help them after I've done my homework, right? And making that connection. Because ultimately, if something goes wrong, it's going to come back to, well, Patricia sent me to them. No, ma'am. I don't do that. Not deliberately anyways, okay? Be willing to give. You will be surprised at what you get in return, both immediately and in the long term. And when I tell you that those long-term returns are sweet because you don't see them coming, man, those are the best ones. Those are the best ones. I had an experience like that just this past week where an opportunity I wasn't seeking, I didn't even know my name was in it. I get this literally random call out of the blue to ask if I want to serve on a board that I'm absolutely thrilled about serving on, and knowing the opportunities and the connections and the relationships that can be made from being a part of it. I'm thrilled. Had no idea I was even in the mix for it. Okay? So trust me that when you put yourself out there, you do the work, you maintain the relationships, and you give and you are willing to give, you can reap the benefits, not just now, but in the long term. And that is really what you want. Because when you take the time to make those investments daily now, that means you are gaining momentum to be able to reap way into the future. And I know some people are like, I need this right now. You know what? Guess what? You have to start with today. You have to start with today. Start where you are. All right? You want to make sure, I want to make sure, make this point, to ask yourself this question. How can I be a tool in someone else's tool belt? When you ask yourself that question, that is the proper road to be on in order to figure out how you can give and help others so that when the time comes, they are also willing to give and help you. All right. Okay, fourth point. You want to be deliberate about what you're doing this year. Be deliberate. And what do I mean? I've already told you you have to write out your goals. You want to identify who, in terms of the industry, the market, the type of position, all of those things. Write all of these things down, okay? Write down what it is you're willing to give. How can you all, what it is that you have to offer someone, right? In order to help them in the future, right now and in the future. But then lastly, now you want to make it real and you want to be deliberate and set a number, whether it's weekly, at a minimum weekly, right? Because there's sometimes you can be super aggressive like I am and say, okay, daily I want to reach this many number of people. But at minimum, weekly, monthly, and annually, okay, about who you want to reach out to. So let's say you set a weekly goal of 3 people. That is so easy, you guys, like minuscule, to reach out to 3 people. Even if you say 3 new people, okay, this means people you have no previous contact or relationship with, which you don't always have to be. It could be 3 people who were in your network but that you haven't been following up with well, all right? So maybe you're going to include 1 or 2 of them in that. You can easily do this as 5 people. Here's the thing. If you reach out, let's keep it at 3. If you reach out to 3 people per week, in a month, that's got 4 weeks, that's 12 people. In a year, those 12 people would mean you will have reached out to 144 people over the course of a year. That's just at 3 per week. Do you see how that magnifies? Think about it. If you're like, oh my gosh, I can't. If I said, hey, you need to reach out to 144 people this year, 150 people this year, you'd be like, oh, I can't do that. Yeah, you can. Because if you do it 3 per week, you will hit that number without question. 3 per week. Think about it. What do you get when you reach out over the course of time? Think about the momentum you gain and the opportunities that get presented in the course of a year when all you're doing is reaching out to 3 people every week. Y'all, the potential is tremendous. Tremendous. So I highly encourage you to do that. Figure out who those 3 people are. Figure out where those 3 people are going to come from. So maybe it's like, hey, I'm going to this conference this month virtually. I want to make sure that I reach out to 10 people from that conference. Well, you can cover, that's 3 weeks worth of people, right? Be strategic about it, all right? Be deliberate about it. And lastly, be consistent about it, all right? Be strategic. Make sure I get this down because you're going to see this again. You want to make sure you're strategic, deliberate, all right? Be strategic, be deliberate, be consistent. And I don't make a lot of promises, but I will promise you that if you do those 3 things and making sure that you're connecting with your network this year, you will see phenomenal results. Okay? That's what I got for you. So think about this. New goals for new goals this year and building out new relationships. Make sure that you set your goals, your personal and professional goals in writing, and then start linking up who do you need to reach out to in order to make those goals a reality, both now and in the future. Make sure that you are figuring out how you can give back and how you can be a part of playing it forward when it comes to nurturing and connecting in your network. And lastly, be deliberate. Make sure you set a real number and that you follow through on it every day, week, month, however you set it up. Make sure it happens. All right, that's what I have for you. I'm super excited. Let me know what you think. Let me know any topics or issues that you may have so that we can address them in the future as we continue this discussion about building out your professional networks in a way that will be help you to build out the success that you want and need for your career long term. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you later.